Hello guys, welcome back to the channel. In this video I'm going to be looking at a section from a program called Food Unwrapped. It's on channel 4 in the UK, and this particular episode they were looking at charcuterie and making salamis, and they were focused on the white mould on the outside, but they actually went through most of the process for making the salami, including some of the ingredients and a little bit of the process. Now, they didn't tell you everything, obviously. Firstly, they didn't have enough time in the section because it's only a few minutes long, but they never do tell you everything, do they? So I'm going to go through this with you step by step, and I'll pause it from time to time and expand a little bit on what they're doing. Right, so without further ado, let's crack on.
Earlier, I got stuck in, literally wrestling my trouser leg, and discovered salami is made from older female pigs, the sows. So these girls have got loads of fat, loads of flavour, all of those things combined to make an excellent salami.
It does.
And now, to finally discover what salami's white outer layer is all about, I'm in Weybridge to visit Tempest Charcuterie. Hello?
Hi, Kate, nice to see you.
Hi, Tom. Trained in the art of butchery and curing meats in Italy, Tom Whiticker is a master meat manipulator. These are huge cuts of meat. And are these from the sows that I've seen?
They are nice, hard, old fat is the key to a fine salami.
Just pause it there. He's absolutely right, but this is a particular choice for this maker. And incidentally, Tom Whiticker and Dhruv Baker, his partner, are the two guys that set up Tempus Charcuterie, and they are completely focused on quality charcuterie, which is really nice to see. But this is a choice. Not all charcuterie is made with older meat, so that's very interesting to note. We'll carry on watching this.
Should we get cracking?
Let's do it.
First, we remove the old girl's weathered skin. And I guess that's something that, it happens with age, doesn't it?
It does. It all gets a bit tough and gnarly.
Happens to the best of us.
Indeed.
Next step is separating lean meat from fat.
We call it leaning out. You want to kind of always have that nice consistent 25-75 ratio.
75% lean meat to 25% fat.
That's correct.
So the white stuff on the outside, is that anything to do with fat?
No, the fat is inside, not on the outside.
So it's definitely not fat on the outside of your sausage?
No.
Right, so that's an interesting sequence there. So they're leaning out and they're looking for that perfect ratio of 25% fat to 75% lean. Now, if you go for the shoulder of a pig, generally speaking, there are some variations between breed and age of pig that you get, but generally speaking, you will get that ratio, 25 to 75. It's very rough, so the whole purpose of leaning out, certainly for a major producer, is to ensure that you can manage that process a little bit more accurately and determine by weight the exact ratios of lean to fat. That's very important. The other thing about leaning out, which they haven't mentioned here, is that leaning out means that you're separating the fat from the lean for a reason, not just to weigh it to make sure you've got the right ratios, but they're going to mince it separately, and they'll also add it to the mix separately as well. And the reason they do this is quite simple. First of all, when you cut through the finished product of a salami, you can see quite nicely defined lumps of fat. Now, if you add the fat too early into the mix, what you get is something called smearing. It's a very widely known phenomenon in the industry, and it really just describes exactly what the fat does. It will smear. So you don't want that in the finished product. So they add it much later into the mixing process, and they also freeze it as well once it's minced. Sometimes they will mince it frozen and keep it frozen until they introduce that fat into the salami mixture at a later stage. But that's the reason they do it, to avoid smearing. Right, let's carry on.
Curious. The lean meat and fat then go through a grinder. We have mince. But But how does a load of raw, unappetizing meat become salami?
Okay, we have got our spice blend, we've got our curing salt, normal salt, we've got whole peppercorns, and we've got a starter culture.
Starter culture?
Exactly, yeah.
You want something essentially to live in your salami.
Absolutely, yeah. It's an integral part of the whole salami making process.
Well, there we go. Starter culture. Now, essentially, all starter culture is similar to a yeast for a baker making bread. It will grow, but it needs a substrate to munch on, if you like. So when you buy a starter culture, it generally comes with a small amount of monosaccharide sugar, something like dextrose or sucrose or fructose, something it can easily digest. And when these starter cultures digest that sugar, they create lactic acid, which actually acidifies the inside of the sausage. Probably they'll get onto that a little bit later on, so I'll not steal their thunder. But they also talked about salt as well, and curing salt. Now, the curing salt that goes into a salami is typically sodium nitrite. Now, the levels of sodium nitrite are controlled very strictly certainly by EU law, and there's laws in the US and Canada and most of the world that control the use of nitrites. But they also talked about salt as well. Typically, salamis have, by weight, about 1.5 to 2.5% salt, which is quite a lot of salt. One of the things that salt can do is inhibit the fermentation process. So whenever I make salami, I always make sure that I introduce them into the mix at different times. Generally speaking, I introduce the starter culture and the monosaccharide sugar in the early stages, and the latter stages I'll introduce the salt and the fat. Now, let's watch a little bit further on.
Starter cultures help control fermentation. Things are starting to become clearer.
Next, we are going to load up our stuffer, and we're going to start making some big salami. And chuck it in.
Stuffers stuffed with sow mince, it's time for the salami to take shape. What's this?
This is a beef bone. It's part of a cow's digestive tract. Pull it all the way down. You want to start stuffing at the end. Wrap your hand around and just go for your life.
Oh my God, right, let's go. It's going to shoot out. To ensure it'll dry properly, even distribution and tightly packed meat is key. No one wants a floppy sausage.
Haha, no one indeed wants a floppy sausage. Oh, innuendos, hey? Right, so packing the stuffer is really quite an important stage because you do not want to get any voids in your salami. You want to try and exclude air as much as you can. So whenever I pack the stuffer, I'm always compressing the meat before it goes in, and then once it's in the stuffer, I will compress it further to exclude as much air as possible. The beef bungs they're using, it's nice to see a maker using a natural product, the beef bung. It's one of the large parts of the large intestine of a cow, and they are not cheap. So they make this product quite a premium product by using those. But they're readily available on the internet. They come packed in salt. They just need rinsing, and then you can, once they're rehydrated, you can use them as demonstrated there. They do smell a little bit though. Yes.
Stop! Do you know that? That's really good.
Yeah?
Oh, she split it.
Blown it. Now, I won't be beaten by a sausage.
Go. Stop!
Very good.
I'm impressed. It's pretty good, I have to say.
And it's white on the outside.
It is.
Is that the white stuff?
No, not yet. Next, we're going to ferment it.
Okay, so before they go off to the fermenting stage, I want to just mention about the bung. That does go very translucent in the first couple of days. It almost goes transparent. You don't see it, and the meat comes through nice and red. Anyway, let's go. Let's crack on.
Why do you ferment salami?
Because the products never get cooked, they're dried. Primarily is a safety thing, but it also has a really big effect on taste. So that kind of tanginess that you get when you eat salami, that's the sort of pH drop that occurs during fermentation.
These impressive members of the charcuterie family ferment for 1 to 2 days before being moved into here, where they'll slowly dry out over 3 to 4 months.
Okay, so the fermentation stage. Now, They talked about the pH drop. Now, pH, for those of you that don't know, is a scale of acidity and alkalinity, and the neutral is in the middle, and it's a scale from 0 to 14. 14 is alkaline, 0 is incredibly acid, and 7 is neutral. So distilled water is typically associated with 7. Now, when you ferment a salami, you're looking for a pH drop to around about 5.3 to 4.6, so it's a range, and if you can get that range, happy days. That product's going to be shelf stable, and then you can mature it for 3 to 4 months. Fermentation stage excuse me, does take place over a period of around about 1 to 2 days, but the temperature and the humidity are quite important. Typically the temperature is between 25 and 28 degrees Celsius. There are 1 or 2 starter cultures that have a slightly higher typical temperature, but very few have a temperature that's lower than that. Otherwise, you just don't get the acidity and the rapid sort of drop in pH. And the other thing that you need to be very careful of when you're making salami, certainly through the fermentation stage, is maintaining humidity. Typically, you want humidity range around about 90 to 95% relative humidity. I would tend to go for nearer 95% relative humidity, and that needs to be maintained throughout the whole fermentation process. Right, let's carry on a little bit further.
So this is our aging room.
Oh my goodness. This ensures something that starts as raw meat and never gets cooked is safe to eat. And it's the white stuff.
It is the white stuff, the mythical white stuff.
What is it?
It's mould. The big reveal is it is mould.
Why do you want this mould on the outside of your salami?
Primarily, it protects the salami because they have to age for quite a long time. It can dry too quickly. It does other things as well. Sometimes things can go rancid. The moulds stop that from happening.
The temperature and humidity in these rooms are carefully controlled to mimic more traditional consistent drying conditions on the continent. That, combined with an air already full of mould spores, means mould starts to colonise in just a couple of days, resulting in that familiar white layer.
Right, yeah, absolutely right. So that mould is actually part of the Penicillium family. It's Penicillium nalgiavensis. In the trade, we call it mould 600, and it comes in a freeze-dried packet. And within that, you need to rehydrate it. You generally put it with some distilled water, rehydrate it, and you either dip your sausage casings in that mixture, or it can be sprayed on. Either way works, but that will then colonize. In the fermenting room, you have quite a high temperature, but in the aging room, the temperature is slightly lower, around about 10 to 12 degrees Celsius. So everything happens at a much slower rate. The humidity is also kept quite high as well, so you want about 80 to 85% humidity. You don't want things drying out too quickly. Interestingly, did you notice around the outside of some of those salami, they had that elastic meat net that you see on some roasting joints? Well, the purpose of that really is because as salami dries, obviously it loses a lot of its moisture and it shrinks. Now, if you didn't have that elasticated sort of stocking on there, sometimes the casing can come away from the meat inside and it tends not to look so great. So by having that elasticated net on the outside means that that is kept in very close contact with the meat at all times. The casing is kept in close contact with the meat at all times. Now that mould does prevent fats from going rancid. It also prevents the salami from drying out too quickly. And that's something that is a problem. If you dry a salami out too quickly, it can become case hardened. And if you get a case hardening on a salami, the inside bit won't dry out and you'll get uneven, and you'll end up getting an uneven salami. And when you cut through it, you'll also get quite a lot of fat smear as well. So it's a great thing to have that mould on the outside. It slows down the drying process and it allows it to dry out more evenly. The other thing about that mould is that it is actually completely edible. It's not harmful at all, and it's got quite a light sort of mushroomy flavour. It doesn't add too much flavour to the salami, but it gives you that sort of familiar mushroomy aroma that we're all used to. Anyway, let's see what else they've got.
It's all perfectly safe and perfectly edible.
So if someone ever says to you, do you fancy a bit of my mouldy old sausage?
I'm game every time.
Well, there you go. I hope you liked that video. It was a nice brief explanation and expanding of what they were already saying there. And I always find that kind of thing interesting. If you're interested in salami and you want to use starter cultures, I do have a video on the channel which shows the top 10 tips for using starter cultures. It's coupled with a download. I'll leave a link in the description to that video. If you like the video, give us a big thumbs up. Consider subscribing if you got something from it and you want to see more like this. In the meantime, we'll catch you on the next video, folks. See ya. Bye-bye.